Hola. So I tried this on Facebook Live, and if you were there, you know how that completely failed. So I thought I would just make this video for you so that I could share how I am planning to start the year. So let's get started. So, simply starting the year. So, we all know that starting the year is actually not simple in any way, in any form. So, I want to talk to you today about a different mindset that I is helping me kind of feel less overwhelmed by the start of the year and helps me focus in on what's really important. So, let's talk about that. So, let's get into the mindset of the start of the year. I'm actually recording this on the first day of pre-planning. So I'm already having these feelings. How do you feel during the first 2 weeks of school? This is my 15th year teaching, and every year you'd think that I'd be calm as cucumber, but I am overwhelmed. I got 15,000 things going through my head, and I got to do this and that. And it just seems like there's so much to do in so little time. It's a hectic, excited, anxious time of the year. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to grapple with and try to figure out, how can I feel better? How can I be more at peace during the start of the year? Now, let's switch it and talk about your students. How do your students feel during these first 2 weeks? If you have kids, or you can remember back to your own school days, there's a lot of stress. You don't know where to go, you don't know where to do. There's new people, new friends, new teachers, new subjects, so much unknown. And it can cause a lot of anxiety. There can be lots of excitement, there can be a lot of disappointment, there can be a lot of fear. There can be so many of these emotions that your students are also going through. So while you're trying to, create this environment where you're in the right mindset, you also want to create an environment where your students are in the right mindset so that everybody can be successful. So, talking about the mindset, let's switch to what are all the things you have to do? I mean, I've got my list right here for pre-planning, and it is long. And it's just, I've got to do this and this and this and this and this and this and all the little details, all the things you forget, that you got to do this and this and this. You got to email this person, and you got to make this list, and you got to do this, and this didn't come in right, and you got to get this supplies, and you got to, I mean, there's just, I mean, it never ends. There's so much to do, and it can be so overwhelming. And it goes for our students too. I mean, they're trying to get all these things done. They're trying to get all their stuff, figure out what they have to have, where to go, where to be when, and then once they're actually in their classroom, actually learn something. I mean, it's a lot for everybody. So we're going to kind of talk about the beginning of the year. How can we make it better? So I compare to the beginning of the year like this. It's not like a paper airplane. When you shoot off a paper airplane, the fastest that paper airplane goes is right there at the beginning. You put in all this effort and it flies and it goes super fast, and then it slows down. That's not the beginning of the year. The beginning of the year is more like a locomotive. And if you've ever seen, like, I can imagine the old timey, like the movies where, they're standing on the train platform and the train is going, and they're waving out the window or whatever. But imagine this huge, massive, heavy machine is got to get going, and it's slowly churning and churning, and finally you get a little bit of speed, a little bit of speed, and finally it catches up and it goes. But it takes it a while to get that momentum, to get this huge, massive machine up and running. And that's how I see the start of the year. It is like pulling and pushing this huge, massive, complicated machine to get moving and get going so that we can actually make some ground, so we can actually get somewhere. So, what I decided is, after COVID, COVID helped me in one way of simplifying my life. It took out so many things that I realized later I didn't have to add in. So I looked at the beginning of the year and I'm like, why am I so stressed out? Like, what really do I have to do in these first few weeks? What is it that I have to do? And I came up with two things, just two. You can remember two. I can do two. Two things: routines and relationships. That's it. That's your goals. That's your goals for the first week, the first month. You want to establish your routines and you want to develop relationships. Okay, these are two huge foundations to getting that locomotive up and running and going. Okay, so here's what I mean: keep it simple. And I put in parentheses stupid. I don't think you're stupid. I don't think I'm stupid. Sometimes I do stupid things, but that's how the phrase goes. Keep it simple, stupid. Routines and relationships. Okay. So when I say routines, what I mean is, what routines do I need? How can I teach these routines then to my students and hold them accountable? Okay. I have to teach my students how to be in my classroom, what being in my classroom is like, right? In the very practical way. I'm not talking necessarily about content. I'm talking about how they enter my class. What do they do when they enter my class? How do they turn in work? How do they, put on, what do they put on their paper? Do they have paper? Do they have a device? How do they answer me? There's so many things that we forget that involves us all working together as a team in this classroom, that you have to teach your students how to be students in your class. Um, and the younger that is, the more you have to teach them. And then the second part of that is relationships. Relationships are a foundation in a classroom, trust, and being able to create a safe space for everybody. So, for relationships, how can I get to know my students? How can they get to know me? And how can they get to know each other? Right? This is what's important, because as we move forward, we're going to lean on some of those relationships, not only for content, but also to create together and to be together. We're going to be together for a long time. And to make this machine work, we're going to have to work together. And to do that, we have to establish relationships. Okay. So let's go into a little bit more of the nitty gritty. I'm going to start with routines. So, what routines do you need to teach and then practice and hold accountable for your students to be in your class? And I listed a few in the session that went crazy. A few of you named some things. Okay, here's some things that I put. Entering and exiting classroom. That may seem very simple, but it can be very complicated depending on what your school is, and especially your age. Like kindergartners, that's going to be something very big. I have to teach them how to go from their classroom to my classroom, how to enter, what to do when they get there, and how to walk through the hall, those kind of things. Getting your materials and putting up materials. Traveling. So I have a carpet area and I have a seating area for when we do other things. And sometimes I need them in different places. How do we travel? How do I get them to do that efficiently, effectively, and not in chaos? Transitions. Something very specific to the CA classroom is choral translations or comprehension checks. How are you going to check comprehension quickly, efficiently, so you can keep moving and teaching them how to do that? How are they going to show you that they understand? And then some people do student jobs. I've done this a little bit here and there and everywhere. And so establishing those student jobs so that you can get this going. This is the part of the practicality that can really mess you up if you don't take the time to teach kids what you want them to do. Okay. So with that, you have to have accountability, right? We have to have accountability. Everybody wants boundaries as much as you think you don't. The kids think they don't. You have to have expectations and reinforcement. How can you quickly, efficiently communicate to students when they are doing something correctly or when they need to change something that they're doing, but not making it demotivating, like not being super negative about it? The way that I do this in my classroom, and feel free to do it anyway, is a point system. I learned this from Annabelle Allen, and I really, really like it. It seems complicated because I think sometimes we don't keep it simple. It's really simple. Points for the class for doing something right. Points for me if they didn't do it correct. Their job is to beat me in points. And I rarely ever have a class not beat me. I make it so they beat me. Okay. Keep it simple. I remember when I talk about this, they're like, well, how do you keep up with the points and where do you put them and who? But keep it simple. They don't have to know all the details and you don't have to come up with all the details. Number one, I do not keep count of these points from class to class. It's erased after they leave and I never remember it again. Okay. Two, I don't tell them how many times they have to beat me to get whatever it is the reward that they're going to get. I just tell them they have to beat me so many times. And if they ask, I'm like, well, I'll tell you later, or you'll just find out. And a lot of times it just happens that right before a break or right before, or there's going to be something that I decide, okay, where you beat me so many times and now we're going to have 15 minutes of free time on the iPads or whatever. The other thing is you kind of feel like if you put in a system, you have to use it every single day, all year long. No, you don't. If this works, you've already trained them. There's no reason to then use it when it's not needed. Use it when you need it. And when you don't, just forget about it. And they will forget about it too. But what's nice is then it can come back, after Thanksgiving break and it's Christmas and everything's decorated and everybody's excited. Bring the point system back out to keep everybody back of like, hey, we still have to do what we do. in January, right? When there's student teachers teaching in their classroom and they're kind of wonky and crazy, or you've been out for the week and now they're coming back. Bring it back and put it away as needed. Make it really simple. And if you want more information about this, Annabelle Allen has some stuff on it. I also have on my blog where I observed her and got this from her. If you want more information, I really like this. It's very simple. It's direct. It's efficient feedback, and you can make it really positive. It doesn't have to be negative. Okay, so routine. We're going to focus in on routines, and we want to teach these routines, and we've got a way to make it accountable. And I'll go in a little bit of how you can make that comprehensible as well, because we want to spend, we want to be effective, and we want to be efficient with our time to stay in that target language. So we'll talk about that. The second part of this is relationships. How can I get to know my students? How can they get to know me? And how can they get to know each other? Okay. So basically what I did is you have two options, and they're very similar. Here's where comprehensible input comes in. This is how you do it. So this is how I'm going to do it. 3 steps. Okay, 3. Number 1, TPR. If you don't know what TPR is, you can go onto my blog and I explain it a little bit more. TPR for me has become the unsung hero of classroom management for me and teaching routines. Okay, it is a very easy way for me to teach action words that I'm going to use for classroom management so that I can stay in the target language. Also, it has a complete other side of language acquisition part that I sometimes forget about. And John Cowart did some stuff on it during a conference this summer, and it was just clicked for me. And I was like, well, duh, that's why it works. You ever have that where you're doing something, you're like, this is working, but I'm not really sure why. Well, I had that moment and I was like, TPR. When we're learning a language, when we first learn a language, even our first language, what we hear is sounds, right? Duh. I know. Okay, stay with me. We hear a glob of sounds. We hear googly goop. We hear, I'm not making fun of any language. I'm just throwing out goop. All right. We hear this big ball of sound. And our brain knows it's got to take that language and it's got to start to divide it where it needs to start to figure out where the little parts are, right? Every language is like this. And our brain may not, if we're young, we may not know we're looking for a subject or a verb or the interrogative, whatever. But our brain knows. Our brain knows it's got to take that language and it's got to break it apart and it's got to put it back together and it's got to figure out what this big gobbledygook is. But the way to do that is it's got to have lots and lots and lots of the language that it understands so that it can categorize that. TPR does this beautifully because it trains their ear to hear Spanish. If you've ever been in a music major or been around music people or you're a music person yourself, ear training. It's training their ear to hear Spanish, to understand it, and their brain to be able to start to organize it in a way so that it can start to understand the different pieces, the different words, and start to put things together. And TPR does this beautifully because they're not talking and they are physically responding to these, which is all other kinds of advantages. But it's also, I'm putting in these words that I'm going to be using for my routines. So all of a sudden, I'm training their ear. I'm teaching them how to be in my class. I'm teaching them how to stay in the target language. And I've started that language process already by establishing meaning. They're not talking. They're not doing forced output. It's just input, input, input. So TPR is huge here. The second part is PQA. PQA is personalized questions and answers. Again, if you don't know what that is, you can go to my blog and I have a blog post about that as well. So this is the part of the relationships where you're trying to get to know these kids in a compelling way. You don't want to ask questions that either they already know or aren't really that fun. Like I rarely ask where they go or what they did over the summer because I know all their other classroom teachers are going to ask this and they have to journal about it all the time. So I usually don't ask that. Now that may not be the case and you could ask that, but I ask other questions like, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite food? Or what's your least favorite food and your favorite food? And let me see if I can guess which food it is. What's the last movie you saw? Did you like it? What's your favorite book? Or you can do all kinds of things. I'm going to show an example here in just a second. But this is a way to get to know them. Now, you're not just doing relationships, you're also doing these routines because as you structure the conversation, you're teaching them a routine of having a conversation in Spanish in class, how you want them to function, how you want them to listen, holding them accountable for listening, and how they're to respond to you. and getting them used to listening to you in the target language. One of the things I love to do with PQA is making a record of the conversation in some visual way. So either that's sticky notes, making a bar graph, or maybe it's writing down on the board in tally marks. Maybe it's having them draw something and showing it. I like to have that concrete visual thing for it. And then the other thing I like to do is have follow-up questions. So then you're getting more input, and also then following it up like a write and discuss, which I talk about the third step, connection. So now you've had TPR, you've had this PQA subject, and then now you can have an informational text about it, a movie talk, a story. And what I like to do with PQA is a write and discuss, and you can look at my blog and the PDF that I have here about write and discuss, where you write down a summary of your conversation. And so then you're reading that content. So you've basically created your own content within class with this conversation, and now you're reading it. So these are kind of the three things that I focus in on at the beginning of the year, because they really help with routines and relationships. Now, starting your first unit. Your first unit, if you're using a CI curriculum, will fall beautifully into this. If you're using Somos, if you're using No Me Digas, which I have which is my curriculum for K through 2, you have TPR. You're starting pretty quick with PQA, and then you're starting to do a story or something else. It's perfect with Somos. You can just do this with your very first unit. Now, let's say that your first unit isn't all that compelling, or you just, this may be the option for you, but there's another option. What if, just throwing this out there, what if you pick one thing, one subject for all your classes? Now, stick with me. What if you chose for the first week or first 2 weeks to talk about one subject with all your classes, okay? Or a group of your classes. Maybe it's something current. Maybe it's something they're passionate about. Maybe it's something they want to talk about. Maybe it's something that happened during the summer. Maybe it's the trend right now, like TikTok or BTS or something like that, where you can talk and you can compare across classes, because now you're not only finding out the information about this class, you can tell this class about that class and this class about that class, and you all are talking about the same thing, and it's kind of camaraderie thing, but also it reduces your preps. Also, the first 2 weeks when you're overwhelmed, you're doing pretty much the same content in every class. You're just kind of differentiating a little bit based on your learners. I've done this before with Pokemon Go, where we did TPR. I did throw and capture and run and all these different things, and we described the Pokemon, and then we talked about, did you play Pokemon Go? Do you know Pokemon? Well, who is your favorite Pokemon? Have you ever seen Pokemon? If you could pick a Pokemon, what do it look like? And then we read like informational text or a movie talk of playing Pokemon Go. And I did that because that was the year that it just kind of exploded during the summer. And so it was really easy for me to pick that and be like, hey, here's this. And then it kind of gave me 2 more weeks to kind of settle in, teach my routines, talk about something fun and compelling. So they know that we're going to do fun things in Spanish class. And then I can move into my content. Now I have the ability to do that because my time limit is not as, constraint like some people are, like in middle school and high school. But you don't have to do that. You could just use it with the unit you're going to have. If you're going to create a mini unit like that, then I would say for 3 or 4 classes or 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how you want to do that, and then plan the unit around that one topic, starting with, okay, what's your goal? Are you wanting to do a movie talk? Are you wanting to write an informational text about this? Are you headed towards a story? And then how can in that PQA, somewhere in there, find your subject? And then the TPR kind of is the last thing that you plan, because you're going to plan your TPR not only on your routines, but on this subject, if that makes sense. So let me show you what I'm talking about. If you wanted to create a mini unit, okay? One of my loves, BTS. All right. So let's say that I want to talk about BTS with my kids, with more than one. So the first thing I'm going to do is figure out, okay, what do I want to show them that I can talk about BTS? Maybe movie talk one of their music videos. I might write something very, especially like description of like, this is so-and-so, this is what he looks like, this is what he does in the group, that kind of thing. Am I going to write up some of the discussion that we have? Is there anything out there? Like, has somebody already written something, or is there an authentic resource that I could use that would be comprehensible? And you don't have to make it really complicated. It doesn't have to be this like huge resource that you create. It could just be very simple. Then I'm going to go into PQA. Okay. What questions can I get about BTS? Do you like BTS? Do you know who BTS is? What's your favorite BTS song? Who's your favorite member of BTS. If you don't like BTS, who do you like? What kind of songs do you like? Do you like this song? Do you like that song? PQA. Okay. TPR. With BTS, I would probably do sings, raps, or dances, right? I'm going to do some of those things that I know are going to come up at my informational text or whatever movie talk that I'm going to talk about. Okay. So that's kind of how my year starts. Routines and relationships. And I do that through TPR, PQA, and then going into my content. I hope that maybe that can give you a little bit of a mindset that simplifies the year. Focus in on teaching them how to be in your classroom and being together and setting that foundation. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, aha moments of, hey, did you think about this? Or that wouldn't really work. What would you do here? Comment below, and then maybe we can think about it together and figure that out. If you have a great idea for a mini unit, something very popular, or something that you really want to share with us down there, and maybe what resource you're planning to use. Okay. So do that. Comment below. You can check me out on my blog, MissSpanish.com, on YouTube and Facebook, and then also Teachers Pay Teachers, where I sell some of my own curriculum and some things. I'll also have a PDF of some notes about this that will be free. You can go and download it there. And don't forget, I am doing this tomorrow. I am going to do a Facebook Live or a YouTube Live on what my year looks like from kindergarten through 8th grade. You can join me there, or you can just check out this channel and I will upload it soon. But thanks, and I hope that the beginning of your year is very simple and calm, and maybe this year you can be less overwhelmed and just enjoy it. All right, adios.